Grammarly is a free AI-powered writing tool that assists you from start to finish. Get help brainstorming ideas for your paper and more. Go to Grammarly.com/students to download for free. That's GRAMMARLY.com/students.
This episode of the Duke Basketball Report podcast is brought to you by the guys at Byrd Campbell, PA, your Duke-centric law firm, founded by Duke grads Jamie Campbell and Tucker Byrd, and with offices in Florida and Texas. Byrd Campbell means business. Duke fans, hello, and welcome to episode 104 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. We are recording this in the evening on Monday, February 5th. It's the day after the Super Bowl, and hopefully you are all recovered. Congratulations to the Philadelphia Eagles fans out there on their victory, and hopefully you guys got maybe 2 minutes of sleep. We have a lot to get into. We will discuss what happened Saturday in New York City, preview the big matchup this weekend against UNC, and we have a special treat for you coming up. But first, I'm Donald Wine, and I am your host this week, back in my home of Washington, D.C. My other two co-hosts are here with me. First off, in Denver, we have Sam Klein. Sam, how's it going?
Going pretty well. I was not able to watch the entire Super Bowl, but what I did see was really exciting.
It was a pretty good game, and for most people, it ended the way it should have. So in Atlanta, we have the man, Jason Evans. Jason, what's up?
I watched the entire Super Bowl. I didn't think I was going to, but as the game went on, I thought I was just going to watch the commercials and not pay attention. And as the game went on, I was like, this is a really, really good game. And yes, the right team won. And both of my sons are in college in Metro Philadelphia. And so they have been having a lot of fun. And there is an online petition to get the University of Pennsylvania to cancel classes, which my son is trying to get me to sign so that he and his friends can go party for the big parade in a few days. And I'm just not sure if I can sign that petition because I'm not a big enough Eagles fan, even though they beat the Patriots, that I want my son to go celebrate their victory.
Consider it part of the college experience. You got to get out and expand your horizons, and sometimes Bud Light hands out lots of drinks to millions of people waiting to see their team celebrate a championship. So let them go.
I'm paying a lot of money for him to be in college, and I kind of want him to get all the classes he can.
That's true. That's fair.
College isn't about the classes, Jason. You know that as well as anyone.
You were not thinking like a dad. You were thinking like a wallet. That's what you're thinking, and that's fair.
With the moment you pay your first college tuition, you too will think like a wallet.
I don't look forward to that. So.
I will say, I still hold a very small grudge against the engineering professor whose name I won't mention on the show, who refused to cancel a quiz that we had in 2010, the day after the national championship game, that forced me to be late for the players' return to Cameron. So I just want to throw that out there.
In 2001, wait. In 2001, I had the same thing, and we just said screw it, and we left. We told our professor that we weren't going, and if she wanted to flunk the whole class, she could flunk the whole class, and thankfully she didn't.
I took the quiz in about 5 minutes. I turned it in. I kind of glared at the professor for an extra half moment before I walked out of the room. And I got a C in the class. So, yeah.
Meh. Worth it. Well, guys, I told you we had a treat, but before we get to dessert, we got to start with the veggies. Let's start with the bad stuff. Duke went up to Madison Square Garden to take on St. John's on Saturday, and after an incredibly frustrating game, Duke suffered an 81-77 defeat at the hands of the Red Storm. Sam, let me start with you. There's so much that I found wrong with this game and how we played, but I'm just going to ask you, what do you think was the biggest contributing factor to this really bad loss?
Oh, the turnovers. So many bad, stupid, unforced turnovers all over the place. I don't feel the need necessarily to pile on so much, but Trevon Duval and Grayson Allen really just did not manage to keep the offense flowing correctly. I think that there was a rhythm that this Duke team had at some point that they have kind of lost on offense. Now, they're still rated pretty well in that offensive area, but the last few games it has seemed like they can't string together more than a couple minutes worth of competent passing and driving, and that's really disappointing. I know that Jason's going to want to talk about free throws and rebounding and all of his favorite things, but it's the driving, or sorry, it's the passing, and then the other problem I think was just letting St. John's players, led by Shamori Pons, who I think we mentioned briefly in the preview, and we said that he's kind of their best player. Led by him, I think he had over 30 points. St. John's was able to just get to the rim, no problem, and score against our defense. And when we get to the Carolina preview, we're gonna talk a fair bit about interior defense. But I think those were the two factors that I really am disappointed by and need to see improved for the outlook for this Duke team to be better going into March.
Jason?
I think a lot of it, the offense was bad, like Sam said, and I hate to call out an individual, but I have to. Trevon Duval is not playing good basketball. He's not even coming close to playing good basketball. He is not. He is supposed to be a facilitating point guard. He's not a shooting point guard. We know that. He is supposed to be a facilitating point guard. And he is not helping this team get the ball in positions where we can score. It feels like he doesn't know how to run the offense. It feels like he's I guess maybe he's afraid to be aggressive with the ball for most of the game, and then Duke gets down and suddenly he tries to take over, and he's often able to take over. It's crazy, like how good he may be for like a 3 or 4 minute stretch on offense, and then how bad he is for the other 32, 36 minutes of the game. It's like, it's this bizarre Jekyll and Hyde thing that he does. But I want to put offense aside for a second. I want to talk about defense, because I believe that is where Duke lost this ball game. 77 points that we scored. We can definitely do better. We usually do better. That's less than Duke usually scores. But to me, the problem is a St. John's team that is not a really good offensive team scored 81. And I looked at some stats, because I'm all about the statistics. Duke, coming out of the NC State game, everyone had identified that Duke was terrible on defense. Against NC State, we gave up 1.28 points per possession, 1.28 points per possession, which is really bad. And then we had a run of games. Against Pitt, we gave up 0.82. Against Wake, we gave up 0.9. Against Miami, 0.93. Less than 1 point per possession is a decent number for this Duke team to strive for. And we had a run of 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games in a row where we gave up less than 1 point per possession. The Virginia game, we came close. Naturally, a game that we lost. We gave up 0.99. But it felt like Duke was in the right kind of place, that we were giving up around 0.92, 93, 94 points per possession. That's a good place to be. If Duke's in that kind of range, Duke is winning the ball game. Against St. John's, we gave up 1.18 points per possession. Now, I just went through numbers, and people are probably, their eyes are glazing over. But the bottom line is St. John's scored too easily against Duke, especially in the second half. St. John's scored 49 points in the second half. That is an ungodly number against a Duke team. It's an ungodly number when you consider that late in the game, they were running the shot clock down as much as they could because they had the lead. Much of the second half, that's what they were doing. We were bad defending the 3-point line. We were bad on offensive rebounds. And what ended up happening in this game, I'm going to bring in my favorite stat. I gave earlier numbers. I got one more number to give folks. My favorite statistic, field goal attempts. When Duke loses the field goal attempt battle, we lose the game because field goal attempts are a great bundling of offensive rebounds and turnovers. Duke had a lot of turnovers. Duke gave up a lot of offensive rebounds. We got out offensive rebounded by St. John's. So as a result, field goal attempts, St. John took 65 field goal attempts and Duke took 51. 65 to 51. 14 extra shots at the basket. They had 14 extra shots at the basket. Of course they beat us. I can't believe they only beat us by 4 with 14 extra shots at the basket. It's a miracle they only beat us by 4.
I mean, that's the talent difference, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Duke is we know Duke is a better team than St. John's. Everyone knows that Duke is a better team than St. John's. They just failed to prove it.
So I think that leads into what I thought was the contributing factor of this game. We can talk about turnovers. We can talk about field goal attempts and rebounding. All of that leads to one thing: intensity. And there were stretches, especially in the second half, we just did not have it. And
they got every loose ball.
Every loose ball, every offensive rebound. It seemed like every little detail in the game in the second half especially went their way. And it wasn't because it was, an unlucky bounce. You have those in games sometimes, right? You have an unlucky bounce, ball, you go for a rebound and it glances off somebody's shoulder and it goes out of bounds and they keep the ball. It was more about St. John's saw that they could win this game and they wanted it more. And that's not something that you see a lot from a Duke basketball team, is to be out intensified by another team. And if we even showed a tenth of more intensity, we win this ball game, because all these little things like turnovers, we will play smarter. Rebounding, we'll get more rebounds that will limit them to one shot, which limits the number of field goal attempts they have. Those sort of things all come together for me. And just really in the second half, especially, there were large stretches of game where I'm looking at the TV. I'm like, this team is not the team we've been watching all year. And that was the most concerning thing to me.
I think it's very telling that Coach K, I don't think I've ever heard him this critical of a team as he was in the post-game news conference. He said that their effort was disgusting. He said that they didn't play basketball that was worthy of the program. I mean, that's some harsh criticism from your coach. It's interesting. The DBR, the guys who write the main page articles in the DBR, speculated after this game that the team may not have the rights to be in the locker room, and that Coach K will probably look at who the starters are and who really earns minutes and things like that in practice. I won't be at all surprised if we hear in the next couple days about this team really being punished and it's not so much punished, but having to earn the right to be Duke basketball players again, because they lost. I think they lost that right against St. John's.
Okay, so they did that a couple years ago. I don't know if that punishment actually worked, but if they were going to go forward with that, Jason, who would you like the starting lineup to be on Thursday against North Carolina to hammer home that point?
Well, I know for sure Trevon Duval should not start. I would, and in fact, I think Grayson Allen has been much better as a point guard than he has as a shooting guard or a small forward. He actually plays more small forward kind of but I think he's been. Would
you bench Duval and put like Jack White in?
Maybe Jack White or maybe Alex O'Connell. I think O'Connell. I'm still not sure why O'Connell didn't play at all against St. John's. Yeah, I think O'Connell may have been sick. I think we've heard he had the flu, and I think that may have been affecting him. How about Javin DeLaurier? If DeLaurier is healthy, DeLaurier is a bundle of energy. I would love a bundle of energy out there against North Carolina at the start of the game. And when we get into our Carolina preview, one of the things I'm going to talk about is something that I think DeLaurier could potentially help with. I wouldn't mind seeing that.
I just don't know if I don't know that we've seen much from Javin DeLaurier the last few weeks to know that he would bring much. But I am curious to to hear what you think about that.
Look, the bottom line is I'm not at practice to be able to see these guys play.
Right. So that's
I think that's where if I was Coach K, here's what I would do the first practice after the game. We would come back, we'd get ready for practice, and guys would put on their blue or their white, whether they're starters or not. And I'd say, no. No one is a starter right now. Go out there. Let's start doing some drills. Let's start doing, whatever it is we're doing. We're mixing stuff up, and we will see who works the hardest. And guess what? If Mike Buckmeyer outworks you, I got no problem starting Mike Buckmeyer. I'm not saying Buckmeyer is going to play 40 minutes. But you got to earn the right to wear DUKE on your chest. And these guys are slowly losing that right, in my opinion.
I want to point out a couple of guys that I thought, if we're talking about who earned that right, there's a couple of bright spots, I think, in the performances on Saturday. Wendell Carter Jr., I thought, had a great game, especially on defense. He had 4 blocks, and the 4 blocks really kept us in the game in the second half. He had some blocks where he came from the other side of the court, and it was an impossible angle to get underneath the basket and somehow put a hand on the ball, but he was able to do it. He also grabbed 15 rebounds. I thought he was one of the bright spots. And I thought Marquise Bolden played well when he was in the game. He didn't turn the ball over that much. He didn't, he was very even keeled. He played good defense on the guy he was scheduled to guard. I thought he did really well. And then Gary Trent Jr., I thought, had a good shooting day, or actually a really great shooting day. He was 5 for 7 from 3. He had 22 points. He led the scores for Duke. So we talk about this. We do have some bright spots, but I think as a whole, there's something missing. And hopefully, we're going to talk about UNC in a little bit, but if you're going to miss something, you better find it for UNC, because when I talk about things like intensity, there's no more intense game on this planet than that game. So they better find it, and they better find it pretty fast.
I do like that you mentioned those bright spots, because Carter and Trent in particular, and then Bolden in this game, but Carter and Trent in particular, the last few games have really, I think, been Duke's best players.
I agree.
Oh my God, you're like reading my mind. I was just going to say for about 2 weeks now. For 2 weeks, I think Carter and Trent have been Duke's 2 best players, and I was going to ask you guys. Do you all think you talk? They talk sometimes about the freshman wall. Mm-hmm. Marvin Bagley, who was technically supposed to be in high school this year. I know he's almost the same age, and he's certainly physically mature enough to be in college. There's no question about that. Marvin Bagley it feels to me, has really hit the freshman wall lately.
Yeah, well, he's struggling much more on defense, and isn't quite getting the same positioning on offense, where I think earlier in the season he would get the ball and be in much more advantageous position to either take one dribble and go to the hoop, or get himself an open shot, or draw the double team. And we, I think, didn't give him enough credit for his passing ability, for finding open shooters or giving it off to Carter or someone. And a lot of that seems to be missing now. And I think some of that's on him. Some of that, I think, is really on the offense being more stagnant, I think, which is what I talked about a little earlier. They're not moving around as much. They're not keeping their eyes up and looking for the ball. And so Bagley more often now is finding himself double teamed like 15 feet away from the basket and having hands all over him, where he can't find that outlet and does have to put up a bad shot. I think that's a thing he could definitely improve on.
But he also had 19 and 7.
He hasn't been there.
Yeah, he also had 19 and 7 on Saturday. So if that's a freshman wall, we're still, we have to talk about this. If that's a freshman wall, I'm okay with this wall, right? This is something that can be overcome. I think the big thing that's happening with Bagley is teams have realized that they can push him out of where he wants to be in the post. And as a result, he's catching the ball further and further out. Now, he's great facing the basket. He's great driving and creating, his own space in the post, but he's getting it outside of the post so much more than he used to, that he's being forced to take more and more difficult shots. And also teams are like, they're
they're playing his left hand completely now. They're basically saying, go ahead. Anything you can do to your right, we'll let you do. And he so prefers to go to his left and use that left hand that I think he's taking less and less good shots, and he's not finding his shot quite as well as he used to.
So I think that's partially true, but I think on Saturday, I mean, he was 6 for 10, and 2 of his misses were 3-point shots that basically rimmed in and out. So I wasn't really concerned about that. Where I'm concerned about his game is that teams have figured out that he is the focal point of the offense, and that we try to establish that early. The reason why he has 6 turnovers on Saturday is not because he's getting bad positioning and bad shots, is because he's getting the ball and teams are either converging on him or converging on the passing lanes where they know he's going to where we normally throw the ball. The corner where Trent is usually there for an open 3, or one of the wings or somebody driving the lane. That is where they're collapsing, and they're not necessarily collapsing all the way around him, but they're collapsing to those angles so that when he has to get rid of the ball, he's throwing it right to somebody on the other team. And that's where that goes back to Sam, where the offense is stagnant and people have figured out what our tendencies are, and we have to reinvent that.
Bagley turnovers. So his 6 turnovers against St. John's was his worst of the season. His second worst performance was he had 5 turnovers against NC State. We lost that game. His third worst game, he had 4 turnovers against Boston College. Now, he had 4 turnovers in a couple other games, but no coincidence that the games where he's struggling to do what he wants to with the ball are the games that we have lost.
Today's podcast is proudly sponsored by 2 Duke Class of 78 alums and former roommates, Jamie Campbell and Tucker Byrd, both diehard Duke followers and the founders of Byrd Campbell, PA, a Duke-centric business law firm with offices in Dallas, Orlando, and the Gulf Coast. Having watched or cheered Duke football and basketball teams through close to 3,000 games, you can say they are true blue. Reach out to them at byrdcampbell.com. That's BYRDCAMPBELL.com. If for nothing else but to say, and especially this week, go to hell, Carolina. Okay, now that we're done with the awful part, we have a treat for you. We here at the DBR Podcast have been trying tirelessly for quite a while to secure someone from the Duke basketball team, either a staff member, a coach, or a player, for an interview. And there was a point where last week we were talking about how that just wasn't going to happen. But we had a breakthrough. And late last week, Jason was fortunate enough to interview current Duke assistant coach Jon Scheyer, asking him about his recent addition, this year's Duke team, and whether he and Nolan Smith still got it on the court. Let's take a listen to that wonderful interview featuring Duke assistant coach Jon Scheyer.
Well, we now welcome to the DBR Podcast one of the all-time great Blue Devils. He is one of the most versatile players in Duke history, concluding his playing career as the only Duke player ever. I love these stats. You know me, I love stats. He's the only Duke player ever to record 2,000 points, 500 rebounds, 400 assists, 250 three-pointers, and 200 steals. This guy filled up the box score. He was a 2-time team captain, including captaining the 2010 National Championship team. And for the past 4 seasons, he has sat right next to Coach K on the bench as an assistant coach. Welcome to the DBR Podcast, Jon Scheyer. Jon, thanks so much, man.
Thanks a lot for having me. I'm excited to be here.
First of all, I can't believe you're making time for this interview because you just became a daddy a couple days ago. Congratulations.
I did. Thank you very much. It was a pretty crazy experience. You know, we were playing Notre Dame, and my wife went to the hospital, and I thought there was a good chance. We were told there was maybe not going to happen until the morning, and we got to the end of the first half, and one of our managers, Michael, guy's name was Michael. He was behind the bench. He was talking to my parents who were with her, and they said, "All right, she's getting close. She's got to leave." And so I at halftime, I told Coach I got to run, and he was great about it. And it was great to see by the time I got to the hospital. Obviously, it's my energy was going into my wife and the baby, but seeing what our guys were doing on TV, I was just getting glimpses just to know we were playing well, and seeing what Jack White did was pretty exciting.
I can't believe that you had a baby and you're still thinking about how Jack White's playing. That is truly a coach.
Well, okay, because my wife's probably going to listen to this. Let me rephrase. It was the priority was the baby, priority was her. Jack White was an added bonus. Okay, that's how it went. It was just icing on the cake. That's all it was. And obviously, it was the best night of my life, meeting my daughter. Her name is Noah, and we could not be any more blessed and thankful. She's doing well. My wife's doing well. So I'm as happy as could be right now.
Well, again, Jon, congratulations. That is so fabulous. I'm a parent of 2, so I know what it's like. It's a truly special and amazing moment. Hey, let's talk about
that is awesome.
Let's talk about the team for a second. I hate to have to do that segue, but that's why we're all here. What's been the biggest challenge that you guys have faced with this group? What's the thing that's causing you the most headaches?
Well, I think just the youth of our team, and I think you hear that a lot, but I think mostly that comes into play when you're still trying to figure out who you are as a player at this level. And so I think that you go through our entire team. Grayson's the one guy, he's the one exception from that. But really with the rest of our guys, they're figuring out who they are. And so as we're playing these games, first couple of games in ACC, playing a high-level game against Virginia and games like that, I think we go through some stretches and some spurts where it might not look the prettiest, and I think that's due to our guys just figuring out who they are and how to be successful, not only individually, but then as a team. And so I think our guys have adapted great. All in all, they've been really, really good. But I think that's the one thing, there's no substitute for experience. And so the games we've been in already this year, I think have really paid off for our team because, when we get to March, you don't get do-overs. So I would say that's the biggest thing right now.
Obviously, they have tremendous potential. You say they're young, but they're also incredibly talented. Are there things that you see in practice where you just go, oh my gosh, that your jaw hits the floor and makes you realize they have the potential to win titles?
Yeah, I mean, just they're not only talented, our guys it's a very competitive group. It's a team that pushes each other. And I think the times where our back has been up against the wall, obviously you can look early in the year against Florida or Texas, playing at Miami. I could go on and on about those moments. Our guys have not been afraid. And that's the one thing that's exceptional about this group. I don't know if you can edit that out or not, but I can say the word exceptional, but that was tough to say that. But that's the one thing. That's the one thing for our guys. They have not been afraid, and they've been really, really aggressive. And when the moment comes, they've really stepped up. So that's been impressive.
So let's pretend that we just won the national title. What's the one thing that will have led to that victory, in your opinion?
Well, you're jumping ahead. I mean, we have a long way to go for that. But I think it's two things that when if you're talking about success in March, and then hopefully, of course we want to play in April and win the national championship. But I think our defense is really improved the last couple of weeks, and that's going to still have to improve from this point to March to win. And then I think being able to offensively just make each other better. And I think when we've gone in trouble, because we have some guys who are really talented individually, offensive players, and not just one or two. We have 4 or 5 guys like that. When we break the defense down and make them work, I think we're an incredibly difficult team to guard. I think we let teams off the hook when we do it maybe after 1 pass or 0 passes. And so it's not coming from a bad place, but it's just, again, knowing the game and not letting the other team off the hook. So those 2 things are key for us.
You mentioned the defense. Real quick follow-up question to that. There are a lot of us who watch the games and feel like the team tends to perform better playing zone than they do playing man. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What's your thought about where our most potential lies defensively?
Well, I think both have been good for us, and I think sometimes you have to take into consideration when you play a defense as your change-up defense, what we've done with our zone, sometimes that can be better because a team's not preparing for that, right? And so I think we've been very solid in man, but I do think the zone. I think we're a good zone defensive team. Even early in the year against Michigan State, we played all zone. We did a very good job. We're a long team. We're active. I think both defenses can be good, but I think it depends on the opponent, depends on the time, the situation of the game. And also, I think that needs to be taken into consideration, though. When you switch a defense up, sometimes that can throw off other teams. So I think that's something we'll look to do. We'll always look to do that. When I played here, we were straight man no matter what. And so I think it's great that, coach continues to adapt and figure out what's best for our teams.
Talk about how hard it is to teach defense to kids this young. We hear a lot about that. Do you find that's the case also?
Yeah, I think it's hard just to teach the speed of how you need to play defense. And so, as things are happening in game time speed, knowing your rotations, knowing the next rotation, knowing where to move, how to talk, how to, close out. And then you add in, knowing scouting. So am I closing out to a driver or a shooter? And things like that. I think for 1 year, it's hard to reach your maximum potential all the time. And so we're trying to cram that in, and I can only speak to my experience as a player. By the time you get to be a junior or senior, I feel like is really when you're hitting your groove, knowing, so much more by then, and where you're able to know it at the speed. I think that's the difference. And so that's something we've really come a long way in, but I think it just takes time sometimes. And so we're going through that process right now.
So I know you work, or at least I've heard that you work with the guards a lot. I mean, obviously that's what you did when you were at Duke. A lot of people give you credit for developing folks like Tyus Jones, Luke Kennard, Grayson Allen into first-round draft picks, likely first-round draft picks. I know every player is unique, but what's your theory for teaching the guards how to succeed?
I just think for a guard, there's no better place to play than here. First and foremost, I think you have the ultimate green light and the ultimate freedom to play here. And the thing I tell our guards is with that freedom comes responsibility. And so you need to make sure you're putting in the work. You're taking care of all the preparation because we don't run a set system. We're running these set plays. A lot of our stuff comes from making reads. And so just learning the game. I think each guy is different. You coach each guy different. I think that's one of the things I've enjoyed and learned as I've gone on in my coaching career is you don't coach Tyus Jones the way you coach Grayson Allen. And you figure out how to get to each guy. And I've had a lot of fun working with a lot of talented players that we've had here. And they've all wanted to be coached. They've all wanted to be taught. And so it's been a real pleasure for me.
Talking a little bit about the freedom that guys get, it feels like that's a little bit of a message for kids who are thinking about coming to Duke. I want to talk about recruiting for a moment because you guys are on a truly incredible run. We've never seen anything like this before. What's the mess? I know you can't mention certain players by name because there are rules and the such. So I'm not going to mention anyone by name. But what's the message that you use to convince these kids to come to Duke, to share the ball, to not be the star someplace else, and come be part of a bigger dream and a bigger program at Duke? What's the message that gets them to come here?
Well, I think first and foremost, you come here because you want to be the best and you want to be pushed and coached. And, if you want to be the best, you want to be coached by the best. And Coach K, there's no one like him ever in the history of college basketball, what he's done. And so I think Coach has a lot to do with it. And we're not just looking for the most talented players. I think we are looking for the guys who want to make a mark in college, who really want to win, who are about the team. And it just so happens that some guys that are the best players in the country fit that mold of who we look for. And so we're really excited about the class. obviously can't talk about it in full depth, but we're really excited. And I think lastly, the fact that we've had a coach here in Coach K that's been here for such a long time, that's what the brotherhood is to us. All the players who have played here, the connection we have, the guys we have, not only in the NBA, but in sports and in broadcasting and all different walks of life. And we're all family. And so to me, it's I feel blessed to be a part of the family. And we don't sell things to guys. We don't recruit them. We believe in this place, and we just share that to the guys that we want to step in next to our program.
Hey, I want to reflect for a moment on your national title, your time at Duke. What is your biggest memory from the 2010 national title game?
Wow, that's a throwback. It's fun to think about. I'll never forget. That game was a really tricky game. And it's one of those games. Sometimes you play in games and it feels like it's a long game or a fast game. And that game, it flew by to me. I felt like we were in control for most of the game. I'll never forget. We were up 5, and we came up empty on 2 possessions, and they scored on 2 possessions. So they cut it to 1. And I don't remember the exact time, but I know there was under a minute left. And I remember bringing the ball up the floor, and we were going to, we were actually going to call timeout to get a set play. But as I was bringing the ball up the floor, I felt the entire stadium stand to their feet. And, there are 70,000 plus people there. And probably a good amount of those 70,000 were rooting for Butler being in Indianapolis. But it was a very surreal moment. You think about playing at the highest level, and I don't think LeBron James has ever played in a game like that. He's obviously played in bigger games, but when you think about 70,000 people, a football stadium, national championship, you're up 1, you have the ball in your hands with 50 seconds left. That was a very cool moment. And for a split second, I just kind of took it in, and I don't think I'll ever forget that. And obviously, winning it was my life would have never been the same if we didn't win that national championship. So amazing memories.
What a great answer. Hey, was there a moment during that season where you realized, where you were like, you know what, we've got the talent, we can win a national title here?
Yeah, I felt all along that team, I truly believed we're meant and had a chance to win a national championship. I think our team really hit a different level when Zoubs, did what he did, against Maryland, and then he, strung a couple games together in a row like that. I felt like we really started to find something, another dimension with our team. And, we went on. We won every game the rest of that year, except we lost at Maryland, which we had several opportunities to win. Of course, we won the ACC championship and then the national championship. But I think that was a defining moment when Zoubs kind of hit his stride. Here's the best offensive rebounder in the country, probably the best rebounder in the country, and that was I would say the moment.
So we're getting close to wrapping it up. I've just got a couple questions left. Important one though. Who wins more one-on-one, you or Nolan? You guys must play all the time.
See, here's the thing. You're trying to split up the dynasty. Nolan and I always play together. So that's the thing. We always play together.
Oh, okay.
We're undefeated. we're undefeated in 2018. I'll tell you that much. And we're undefeated since I've had a baby girl. We're 1-0 since then. And so I can tell you that much. We play together. That's my guy. And so yeah, we have fun getting it in still when we can.
Wait, who do you play against?
We get, our managers we play against, and sometimes we have guys that come in from out of town. We find guys, and our managers mostly though play us. So they're a decent challenge. They're good guys. They compete hard. But Nolan and our chemistry is just too much for them.
But like you'd never played like Tyus and Justice, or like this year you wouldn't take on like Trevon and Wendell or anything like that, right?
Luckily for them, no. But we no, we don't. But maybe in the off season we'll give them a crack at it.
Okay, so last question. I ask this of every single person who comes on the show. We ask them for a good story about Coach K, and we've gotten some great ones in the past. We've gotten stories about Coach K using a samurai sword to motivate the team and all kinds of other really good stuff. So what is the best Coach K story that you can tell us for the public?
That's a great question. It's hard because there are so many. And so this is a story you kind of hear like in movies or, anything like that. But when we were getting our butts handed to us when I was a freshman, it's a really trying season. It was a frustrating year, and we had 22-11. We had 2 different losing streaks of 4 games. And during the second losing streak, Coach called a meeting in his office, and he said he was talking specifically about my class, which is myself, Gerald Henderson, Lance Thomas, Brian Zoubek. And and Coach said in the meeting, he was talking about our team and all the things we need to do better, and a lot of things we needed to do better. But he said, listen, you guys, your class, you follow what you've been doing. You guys will win a national championship before you leave here. I can see it. You guys have it. Follow your instincts, and I'm with you. And I'll never forget that moment. And as soon as we won the national championship, flash forward a few years, and I went up to Coach and I said, remember when you told us we were going to win a national championship when we sucked? And he said, yeah. And it's just, Coach has amazing insights. And he doesn't just say things to say things. I'll tell you one other quick thing before we go. He did the same thing in 2015 when we won the national championship. That year, we're playing Carolina at home. I'm sure you guys remember the game. We're down 7 with 1:30 left. And Coach huddles the guys up and says, look, we're going to win this game. And you could tell he meant it. He believed it. He knew it. And sure enough, we come out, we make some plays and tie it up, send it into overtime, and we win. So stuff like that is, his feel for the game, his insights is one of a kind.
Well, Jon, you're a student of the game. That was supposed to be my last question, but one more thing just occurred to me. I mean, you're a coach, you're a player, so smart about it. Is there a piece of advice you can give to us fans so that when we watch games, it'll make us smarter about basketball? What should we watch for that most fans miss that you as a coach see all the time?
Yeah, well, you know what? Actually, that's a really good question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that before in that way. I think a lot of the game, I hate to say fans, but I think people in general don't look at the quote-unquote smaller things of the game. I think if you look at our next game or any game in college, what team gets the most loose balls? The long rebounds, the deflections, those loose balls. I think that's such a huge thing. Are we setting screens? Are we making each other better? I think a lot of times we get caught up with the dunks or the amazing plays or crossovers. And really the game to me is about making each other better. And those small things add up to big things. And so that's what we look for as coaches. I know as a player, I grew to appreciate those things even more. My teammates give me a hard time because I actually took a charge in the national championship game. I don't know, it was my first game my freshman year. No one expected me to take a charge, and so I think that's an example. But yeah, I would say those things would be something to pay attention to more.
Jon, hey, again, thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate you joining us here. Good luck to you, to the coaches, to the players on the rest of the season. Just know that all of us will be watching with bated breath, and we really hope it ends the way several of the other seasons you've been around the program ends, with more rings on your finger.
Well, that would be great, and I appreciate you guys, and thanks for having me on.
Okay, a million thanks to Jon Scheyer for coming on the Duke Basketball Report podcast. We really appreciate him being on. we're going to do some reactions to this interview, and I'm going to start with you, Sam. What were your takeaways?
Well, I think the most important thing is that he talked about how tough it is to get all the young guys playing together on defense, and how challenging that is. I enjoyed generally how candid he was throughout the interview, and was surprised at kind of how much insight he was willing to give us about how that process has gone this year. And then kind of on the fun side, that question about him and Nolan Smith was really the one that I wanted to ask. And I'm kind of bummed that he didn't give me the Scheyer versus Smith one-on-one answer that we wanted. And I also wonder how, what is the competition supposed to be between two former Duke All-Americans and the guys who are the managers for the program? I mean, I know that from time to time Duke will get managers who are really talented basketball players, but it's not like they're recruiting for those guys. Those are just the guys who get those jobs. So
yeah, when he said they were undefeated, I was like, oh, that's so cool. If
he was undefeated against like Jeff Capel or like if they're a random alum, like is Gerald?
Wait, Jeff Capel.
Henderson?
Jeff Capel's 10 years older than him and clearly not in playing shape anymore. I thought he was going to say that they were undefeated against they play. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Like exactly like Gerald Henderson when he comes back in town, or Nate James gets together with. Undefeated against the managers. I mean, come on, John. Come on.
Yeah, he could have done better with that.
I mean,
otherwise,
he may be holding out. Like when I was listening to it, it sounded like he might have been holding back. There is somebody that they're playing and they just didn't want to put them on blast as having beaten them. I think there might be something more than him just playing the managers, and those two playing the managers are just whooping up on them every chance they get.
I have to say, so my two favorite things from the interview, one was when he suddenly realized, when he was telling the story about his beautiful baby girl being born, and he suddenly realized that I kind of called him out on the fact that he, rather than paying attention to his wife and baby, that he sort of noticed how Jack White had played against Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh, wait a second, hold on, because my wife is going to listen to this. And he corrected himself. I thought that was hysterical. And it does show you, though, how focused this guy is on coaching and on the team. And I love that. And then the other thing I really enjoyed was his reflections on the moment in the 2010 national championship game, and looking around and seeing where he was and thinking about where he'd come from and all those other kind of things. I thought, like Sam said, I thought Jon Scheyer was incredibly candid and forthcoming and honest with us, and I really, really admired that. And it was tremendous fun. I'm so fortunate that I got the chance to speak with him.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was really cool when he was talking about that. He had mentioned, when his class was freshmen, Coach K came up to them and said, I think that you guys, if you perform hard, you perform well and work hard, you guys are going to win a national championship while you're at Duke. And for him to, he said the first thing he did is he grabbed Coach K and said, remember what you told us in that locker room 4 years ago? And Coach K said, absolutely, I do. And for that to come full circle, I think is always a moment that I'm sure every basketball player would love to have. And I'm glad that he was candid about that, part of his college experience and how he was able to fulfill that prophecy, I guess. All right, folks, we got a big game this week. On Thursday, Duke will travel 8 miles down 15501 to the Dean Smith Center in Chapel Hill to take on North Carolina. Both teams are coming into this game in some minor slumps, but as the saying goes, throw all that out the window. We all know this. This is the biggest, baddest, best rivalry in college basketball, and it's finally here. We are going to give you some predictions for this game, some things to look for. I'm going to start with Jason. We kind of split it up a little bit, but Jason, give me your keys to victory.
Well, so we divided things up, and I got the UNC defense, and it may seem a little strange to start with defense, but I actually think there's an aspect of Carolina's defensive effort that is the key to the game. And we've talked about it a lot this year. I think the key to the game is rebounding, because North Carolina coming into this season had lost all their big men from last year. Not like most of their big men. They'd lost all, well, I guess Luke Maye. Sorry, I forgot about Luke Maye. Yes, they had lost virtually all their big men from last year. Luke Maye was the only guy coming back, and Carolina won the national title. I hate even saying those words, but they won the national title because they were an incredibly dominant rebounding team. And the conventional wisdom was they didn't have studly big man recruits coming in. They only brought back Luke Maye, who was not a amazing, great rebounder. He's good, but he wasn't incredible. And the conventional wisdom was they would not be nearly as good a rebounding team this year. Well, that's wrong. It is unbelievable. I don't know how Roy Williams does it, but this North Carolina team is number one in the nation. They lead the nation again in rebounding. They grab 57.7% of all available rebounds. They are tops in the nation, grabbing a total of 43.4 rebounds per game. They are second in the country in defensive rebounding. This is a team that gets rebounds. And look, it's going to be a case of the immovable object against the unstoppable force, because Duke is also a great rebounding team. Carolina's number one in rebounding. Duke is number two in total rebounds, number four in rebounding percentage. It is going to be so important for us playing Carolina to grab rebounds, because that's their only chance in this game. So again, looking at the defense, which is my assignment out here, Carolina is not nearly as good on defense this year as they were last year. They're pretty good. They're number 29 in Pomeroy, but they aren't quite as good as they were last year, and there's a reason why. And it's really interesting because this isn't necessarily something that you would identify as something that Duke typically takes advantage of, but we're going to have to. Carolina is terrible guarding the three-point line. I mean, terrible. And it may be that what they do is they get in the lane, so they get all the rebounds, and they give up all the threes. North Carolina is 312th in the nation in opponent three-point field goal percentage.
So do you
Their
have
opponents,
a big game coming from Gary Trent here?
Oh yeah, little Gary Trent time. Yes, and I'm hoping Grayson Allen finds his stroke. If he's going to find his stroke, now is the time, because North Carolina, like in recent games, Carolina's been really struggling lately. In like their past like 4, 5, 6 games, something like that, their opponents are hitting 45% of their threes. I mean, that's a big number. This Carolina team, the way you can get them on the defensive end of the floor is you can score from the outside. So it's going to be really interesting. My assessment, and again, my assignment was to look at them from a defensive standpoint. They're going to be smaller than Duke most of the time, but they are really good at rebounding. But their focus is going to have to be getting out to the 3-point line, and Duke's focus is going to have to be finding a way to make sure they don't get beat on the boards, and also make sure we take advantage of Carolina's biggest weakness, which is guarding the three. Sam, I believe you had the Carolina offense. Tell me a little bit about what to expect there.
So to start, I will make almost the exact same point that you made, which is about rebounds. UNC is third in the country in offensive rebounding rate. And we know that Duke is first in offensive rebounding, but UNC is almost as good as the Blue Devils are at grabbing their own misses. And you mentioned Luke Maye. It kind of starts with him. He's averaging a total of 18 points and 10 rebounds a game, and nearly 3 of those rebounds are offensive. But they also get contributions from Theo Pinson, as well as their 2 backup big men, Sterling Manley and Garrison Brooks. All these guys are good on the offensive glass, and that is a lot of where UNC's offense is coming from. A couple of the guys are okay at shooting from outside, but the offensive rebound is really key. And then, of course, the other players to be looking out for on the offensive end are Joel Berry and Theo Pinson, who have both been around for a long time. Pinson's actually leading the team in assists this year. So he and Berry share the ball pretty well. and but we know the shooting is not the strong suit for Carolina. So forcing them to take more outside shots, trying to keep them off the glass is going to be key for Duke. And most importantly, I think it's stopping Luke Maye, because he's their leading scorer. He's kind of who the offense runs through. So I'm interested to see, maybe Duke has a double team plan in place for Luke Maye. Maybe they've got a zone that's going to collapse on him. There's a couple different ways I think you can defend them. And we know that Duke's defense has struggled in the last few weeks. So maybe this is an opportunity for them to kind of right the ship against a team that I think is actually a little bit easier to defend against. Like the defensive game plan is a little bit simpler than it might be against a team that can really rain it from outside. But like I said, offensive rebounding is the key here. Duke needs to keep UNC off the glass. And so one of, or both of, Carter and Bagley need to have really strong rebounding games against Carolina if Duke wants to come away with a victory in Chapel Hill.
So the one thing I was going to focus on is the intangibles, since Sam and Jason focused on offense and defense. And the one thing that I'll always say about games in the Dean Dome is that they're always a struggle on both ends of the court. It's going to be one of those things where tempo-wise, we have to limit the turnovers that we have, because all of that, the powder keg of energy that's in that building is going to explode every single time that we do something that goes against what we're trying to do. So, for example, our freshmen have never experienced this before. We have a very young team, and most of our team has not really experienced this. A lot of the guys who are going to contribute have not been in this kind of environment. We've played on the road, but there's playing on the road and there's playing in UNC at Chapel Hill. They have to come out with the intensity of a lifetime. Anything, they have to channel every single ounce of energy that they have and really go after UNC, because if they do that, UNC has been proven this year that they're not that great. You know, they started out, they have a good young team. I'm sorry, not a good young team. They have a good experienced team, but for some reason at home, it just hasn't been clicking for them. But we can't count on them. So we can't count on UNC to just not click. We have to go and take this game. And I think on our freshman end, Grayson Allen has to be the best leader that he can be. And I think if he can do that, we will have a good chance down in Chapel Hill, because that leadership is going to be key to getting our guys ready to experience the atmosphere that they're going to experience. And we all talk about how the Dean Dome is a wine and cheese crowd, and it normally is. But for Duke UNC, you got to throw everything out the window, and you have to expect the unexpected. You have to expect that this is going to be the wildest crowd you will ever experience. And if they can come out and battle that, I have a good feeling that we'll win this game.
I'll say this. This is a game between two teams that are both a little bit desperate. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in that regard. Duke is desperate because that loss to St. John's, just rattled us, I think. It just was not a game we were supposed to lose. But Carolina is desperate because this is a club that is 6-5 in the ACC. They've lost 3 of their past 4 games in the ACC. The only victory they have in their past 4 games is against Pitt, and that doesn't even count. It shouldn't count. The Pitt is,
and that's coming from us right after Duke has lost a game to St. John's.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So they've lost 3 out of 4. They have this game against Duke. Carolina's closing stretch, 4 of their final 6 games are on the road. One of their home games is against a Miami team that is playing really good basketball right now. Duke's win at Miami is looking better and better, as each game passes. This is a brutal final stretch that Carolina has. A team that's lost 3 out of 4. If they lose this game to Duke, their season could spiral out of control really, really quickly. And I think that they're going to come out. They're going to show tremendous intensity. I bet the Tar Heels, I believe, and Duke's going to have to match that intensity. Look, this is a lot of what we saw against St. John's. St. John's would not let us get the loose balls. St. John's was going hard to the basket and playing physical on defense the whole time. I think that's what you're going to see from UNC. And it's going to be really interesting to see if Duke can respond to that and match it and find a way to win, against a really, really, really good team in that team's home court.
And one final thing that I'll note is this entire year we've talked about, and not just us, all of college basketball has talked about how good this Duke team can be. How good are they compared to some of the rest of the good teams in college basketball? We've been at or near the top of the polls all year. And even when you're talking about bracketology, that, obviously is way too early to predict where we would end up in March Madness, but we've been on the top line the whole year. Today, the polls came out and we're now ninth in the AP poll, and most bracketology has us on the 2 line. This is the first time that loss to St. John's is the first time that college basketball experts, analysts, fans are starting to question whether this Duke team is as good as we thought it was back in November. And this is a good chance to make a statement for this team.
I'm not sure. Duke's going to have to win a lot of games in a row to sort of reclaim thinking that they could be a 1 seed, especially knowing that UVA is clearly running away with the ACC. They still haven't lost, and Duke's definitely not going to, or not definitely, I mean, it's still possible, but Duke is probably not catching UVA for the 1 seed in the ACC tournament. They could still get another shot at them when all the teams are in Brooklyn in March. But for the time being, Duke is a 2 seed at best, and they have a few more games where they have to prove that they are worthy of even being that high, I think.
Right. And I think the narrative would be, if we go into Chapel Hill and we lose, the narrative is going to be that there's something wrong with this Duke team. If we go into Chapel Hill and we put on a great performance and we beat UNC and we beat them pretty soundly, the narrative on Friday morning is Duke is back. There was nothing to worry about. Just another, bump in the road. And so I think that's why this game is super important for our guys, is they have to respond to that. They have to come out and say, what you saw from us on Saturday in New York City is not the Duke team that you should expect the rest of the year. And it starts right now. So I think it'll be a great game. Obviously, it's always one of those games where I wish I had a box of Maalox available, but it's going to be a good game. And if we can come out with some fire and some passion, it's going to be one for the ages. All right, as usual, it's time to give out our Player of the Week honors, and I'm going to start with Sam.
So I know that we said that Gary Trent and Wendell Carter both had pretty good showings against St. John's, but since I don't know when I'm next going to be able to give the Player of the Week to him, would like to give my Player of the Week honor this week to Marquise Bolden, who in limited minutes against St. John's, as we pointed out, had a pretty decent night and looked, I think, better than he has in weeks. Obviously, he was dealing with the injury that kept him out of a few games to his knee. So Marquise Bolden, my Player of the Week.
Jason?
I think I may be 3 weeks in a row now that I've gone Wendell Carter Jr., and I'm going Wendell Carter Jr. again. As we said earlier, he and Gary Trent have been the 2 best players for Duke over the past couple weeks. I think he has elevated his game. I think it was Sam who pointed this out. Wendell Carter's defense is on a different level from where it was a month ago. And it's not just rim protection. He is giving us elite rim protection. But it's not just rim protection. I think he's helping way better than he used to. He seems to be hedging properly. It feels like, he really understands much more than he used to, where he's supposed to go, how he's supposed to talk, all those things. He's doing a heck of a job. And so my Player of the Week is Wendell Carter Jr.
I'm glad that you guys mentioned Marquise Bolden and Wendell Carter. I was thinking about going Wendell Carter, but I wanted to make sure that the 3 guys who I thought played the best in the game on Saturday all got nominations. And so I'm going to go with Gary Trent Jr. He was
ACC Rookie of the Week, Gary Trent Jr.
There you go. And with good reason. He's been shooting lights out the last couple weeks. As Jason said, he's been one of our best players by a long shot, and it's very good to see that he is continuing that trend as we enter UNC, because I think like you said, Jason, his 3-point shooting is going to be very, very key on Thursday night. If he can keep him hot, he's going to have a really, really good day against UNC. So he is my player of the week. Now it is time for parting shots, and I will start with you, Jason.
So I want to tip my cap to Tide. I'm talking Tide, the laundry detergent manufacturer. And of course talking.
I thought
I did not eat a Tide Pod. No, this was not about eating Tide Pods.
I thought they were a convenient food manufacturer.
No, this is not about consuming Tide Pods. I tip my cap to Tide because I think there's always, every year to me, it's a challenge to see who's going to come up with the most clever, the funniest, the best Super Bowl commercial. And I think Tide truly accomplished something special last night with their series of ads that said, no, it's a Tide commercial. It's a Tide ad. They all starred David Harbour from Stranger Things, and I love Stranger Things so much. But anyway, the idea behind these ads, I'm going to say this like people didn't see them. What am I doing? Everyone saw them. They know what the idea behind the ads is. The idea behind the ads is that they take sort of iconic other ads for other products and they interrupt the ad and they go, no, this is really a Tide commercial. Because they show that the person's wearing bright, colors or his white looks really white or something like that. And by doing that, they made me think throughout the entire podcast, like literally every commercial that would happen, I would think, wait, is this actually a commercial for Pepsi or is it secretly a Tide commercial? And to me, that was brilliant. And so tip of my cap, my parting shot, love those Super Bowl commercials. The campaign, it wasn't the best one. Like the one I liked the best was the Amazon Alexa commercial, especially with Anthony Hopkins at the very end of it. But I thought the Tide campaign was the smartest campaign that I saw at the Super Bowl last night.
Sam?
I wanted to just give a quick shout out to all of our relatively new listeners. I watch our listenership sort of throughout the episodes, and I can see kind of the general trend of it climbing up. So thanks to all of our recent subscribers. It seems like we got more people than ever listening to the show, and that's really great. We appreciate it, and we hope that you keep telling all of your fellow Duke fan friends to come check us out at Duke Basketball Report.
That's awesome. Thank you to all you guys out there. My parting shot is a personal one. As all you guys know, it's Black History Month, where we kind of recap some of the great achievements that African Americans and Black people as a whole have done, and also recount some of the hardships that we have endured along the way. And one project that I have been doing on the side here, as most of you know, I am a soccer fan. I follow the U.S. national teams around throughout the year. But for Black History Month, I wanted to do something that was a personal journey of growth and kind of learning about some Black history of soccer. And so I've started a series where I'm writing an article at starsandstripesfc.com. That is another SB Nation blog, but it covers the U.S. national teams. So you can check it out on SB Nation. But every day this month, and there's going to be 28 stories on 28 different Black history moments, a key player, or other key moments in Black soccer history. Some you guys may be familiar with if you are into soccer, and some you may be reading about for the first time. So I'm just giving a shameless plug. Go ahead and check that out, and hopefully you'll learn something, as I've already done. We've got a lot of things coming up this month, and like I said, I'm going to try to do a story every single day to bring you guys a little story about Black soccer history. So just a cool project that I'm doing this month, and hope you guys check it out.
That is really cool. Can I really, really quickly connect sort of your parting shot and my parting shot and ask you, did you see the Dodge Ram ad where they used Dr. Martin Luther King's speech?
Do you want me to go angry? Because I can go angry. I did.
Oh my God, that was I'm not African American, and I found that to be one of the most offensive things I've ever seen in my life.
it was appalling. Just
It didn't make any sense.
Well, the thing about it is, it didn't make sense because as soon as literally when if you guys haven't seen it, they talk about it opens up with a caption that says February 4th, 1968, 50 years ago today, Martin Luther King said this. And it's a very famous speech that he gave about how capitalism should not define you. And one of the things in the whole speech is how he says, you know, you don't have to have a nice car. You shouldn't have to worry about what car your neighbors have or what car you have, because that doesn't define you. And they took that speech and turned it into, you should buy a Dodge Ram. And I think that was absolutely a distortion of what Dr. Martin Luther King was trying to profess. And also just absolutely appalling that they would use his words that were really used to ask people to define themselves by their character and turn that into an ad to buy a car or buy a truck. And I think that was just absolutely out of line.
I can't even begin to figure out how that ad made it through. I mean, there had to be at least 5 or 6 meetings, or maybe 10 or 15 meetings where that ad was discussed. And never in any of those meetings did someone go, you know what? I've thought about it a little bit more, and this is the worst idea we've ever had. So I mean, come on.
So Jason, I will answer that question. How did it get through all those rounds probably of talks and people discussing it and deciding whether or not it was a bad idea? Because there was nobody in that room, I'm guessing here, there was probably nobody in that room who had the ability to tell them that this was a bad idea. That's plain and simple. And I think that goes to a further stretch of why we have Black History Month, because we need to expose these hardships that we've endured. We have to talk about, drive the conversation about why things like that commercial are so appalling to us, why that really eats at the fabric of a history that has already been, you know, mostly washed out of history, out of the history books, and how we're trying to have to find ourselves daily because it's a large struggle. I mean, for me to even find out where my parents came from was a struggle. You know, that sort of thing is what Black History Month is all about, where we try to reconnect and we try to learn from the mistakes that this country has made with regards to African Americans and figure out how we should never do that again. But things like that commercial last night are really why we have to have that conversation way beyond February.
Man, I'm glad I brought this up, because that answer, Donald, that was very eloquent, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I guess, guys, that's going to do it for episode 104 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. A reminder for you folks that you can check us out on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, or SoundCloud. And we ask that you please subscribe. And if you love what you're listening to, be sure to rate us and give us a review. It really helps us with searches, and we absolutely appreciate it. If you have any complaints about what you're hearing, feel free to email us at dbrpodcast@gmail.com. A quick note about our upcoming schedule. We will be recording our next episode immediately following the UNC game on Thursday, so look for that episode, hopefully ready for your listening pleasure on Friday morning. Until then, for Sam Klein and Jason Evans, I'm Donald Wine. Thank you all so much, and while the Duke band plays us off, let me just say it one more time with emphasis. Go to hell, Carolina.